Gamblin Gauchos, part of the Stake in the Plains Content Network, and the Dave Campbell's Republic of Football podcast feed. Just a couple of casino caballeros talking Texas Tech, betting on the Big 12 and beyond. Now, here's Kyle Jacobson and Rob Bro, live from the Cardinal Sports Center studio.
Welcome into the Gamblin Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Kyle Jacobson. For the user OK, who said that the over-under on 7.5 minutes late was going to be the number, we hit the under. We're live, pal. Just a couple of minutes late, so we're fine. Oh, I hid the comments from you, Kyle. That's my bad. You're not going to be able to see them today.
I was just looking for that, but I'll trust that you'll read any of the important ones.
I saw your eyes darting around. I hid them so our guest wouldn't have to be privy to them the other day. I need to turn that back on. Sorry, Ryan says, let's gamble. We're gambling. We're in the Cardinal Sports Center studio. Live. If you need to gear up for anything, including the Lubbock Matadors whiteout game coming up, or anything else, Texas Tech related or otherwise athletically, you can do it at Cardinal Sports Center, mycardinalsports.com, or live and in person right outside the Loop on Slide Road. We're also part of the Republic of Football, Dave Campbell's football feed. You can find him wherever you find podcasts. Kyle, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Did you also fix my mic issues so people won't hear me breathing all episode?
It's going to be better today, yes.
Okay.
Already comments on the shirt, yes.
I don't know what the deal was last week, I guess. It sounded like I was sucking wind the whole episode. And I didn't feel like I was breathing that hard, but I guess the mic was picking up everything.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that was, but we figured it out, hopefully. All right, I think I turned your comments back on too. All right. People are asking why the shirt. Well, do you want to get right into it? Why the shirt? Or do you want to talk about your shirt first? Because that technically happened first.
Yeah, we could talk about mine. Let's talk Big 12 baseball first, then we'll go to the Magnificent Seven. And it's officially off season. We're talking conference realignment.
So you have the West Virginia hat on that looks like the New York Yankees, number one in the Big 12 baseball world, the standings, and the Gamblin Gauchos world. Big weekend this weekend. West Virginia at Texas, Baylor out of conference, Kansas at Texas Tech, Oklahoma State at Oklahoma, TCU at Kansas State. Kyle, have you seen the standings? There is a chance for a 6-way tie at second place.
That'd be fun.
If OU wins 2, if Texas Tech wins 3, if Oklahoma would have to win 3, TCU would win 2. You could have a bunch of 13 and 11s. Texas getting 1 from Kansas, from West Virginia, Kansas State winning 1 as well. You'd have a bunch of 13 and 11s.
That would actually sum up the conference pretty well this season, I think. I think certainly West Virginia deserves to be the champion, and they deserve to be a regional host. I think they've set themselves apart. I think Oklahoma State has also done that in the latter half of the season. But yeah, it would be fitting in a year where there was so much parity and seemingly not a lot of separation and no real elite teams that you'd have a 5 or 6-way tie for second place. So I guess I'm rooting for it just because that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, and in a world where the Big 12 generally gets maybe 3 Big 12 teams into the regionals, you had a year where Texas Tech finished 3rd in the conference and was not in a regional. And all of a sudden this year, you might have 5, 6 Big 12 teams. That could be a leap. That could be a giant leap. But stranger things have happened. And to have a bunch of evenly resumed teams like Texas Tech, TCU, Kansas State, all there in the middle, with West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and Texas probably for sure getting in, you kind of have, is Kansas State getting bumped? Is TCU getting bumped? Is Texas Tech getting bumped? You're kind of asking those questions now.
I think of those teams, TCU is the one. If I was a TCU fan, I'd be most nervous. I think West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Texas, no question. I think Texas Tech, unless the wheels just absolutely fall off, I think they're on the right side of the bubble. But TCU, the RPI is 52. I think they were below 500 in conference play until this weekend sweep of Baylor this past weekend. So I don't know. I think K-State is also probably a bubble-ish team, but probably with Texas Tech on the right side of the bubble. TCU is the one I'd be most nervous about if I was a fan of them.
Which is funny because if you're TCU, feels like they're the least nervous. I mean, they just seem very confident, and I guess maybe we just follow a baseball podcast that's very confident, but we'll see.
I have to shout out Ray for doing a blind resume test and leaving off perhaps the most important bullet point. And also doing it, I don't think he did this on purpose, but right before we played the best team in the conference and our RPI strength of schedule is due to go up.
Yeah.
And he had all those data points like Team A's strength of schedule is this bad. It's like, well, we're about to go on the road against like a top 10 team. So give us 72 more hours. And yeah, you only take 1 out of 3 this weekend, but the RPI still goes up, hovering around 40 now. And TCU, they sweep Baylor, and RPI is hovering at around 52. So I would say, despite you going 1-2 and them going 3-0, you still exited the weekend in a better position than the Frogs.
I would like to see those bullet points again. The same bullet points between those two teams. We don't have to be blind either because we know what's happening. But yeah, just playing West Virginia helped Texas Tech this weekend. Winning 1 helped a bunch. You went up 18 spots game 1. And what's crazy is you got beat by a touchdown and a field goal, or they scored a touchdown and a field goal, and you went down 1-2 because you're playing West Virginia. And that's how baseball works. They beat you 2-1 this weekend. Regardless of the score, they beat you 2-1. A lot of people feel, or get in their feels, I should say, in baseball season because they go game to game. It's a lot more enjoyable for a baseball fan to go series by series. And you lost that series. You're now 4-3 in the Big 12 in series. That's about where you are. I think you're still a top 35 team in the country, and the RPI has you at 40.
Yeah, what I like to do with baseball in a 3-game series is set expectations going in, and depending on the opponent. So, like with West Virginia, I thought, okay, a sweep, borderline impossible. You never care what it looks like when you sweep a team. 2 out of 3, not undoable, but not likely. 2 out of 3, same deal. Against a team like West Virginia on the road, any way you can get it, take it. If you win 2 games by 1 run and you lose 17-3 in the middle, like you did on Saturday, you take it. 1 out of 3, I would say, helps your NCAA tournament prospects, and you avoid a sweep. And so that was kind of what I thought was a realistic outcome and a positive outcome for Texas Tech going in. And so, yeah, especially when you get game 1, then you get greedy and you go, okay, like, yeah, let's try to win this series. We have 2 opportunities, or heaven forbid, could we sweep these guys? So the order in which you win or lose is always, kind of impacts your psyche as a fan in baseball. But going in, I was like, let's get 1 out of 3 minimum and solidify our spot on the right side of the bubble, and that's what you did. So hard to complain too much. I mean, West Virginia's lost 2 games in the last month, and one of them was to Texas Tech in Morgantown. So it was very unlikely that you were going to win that series or sweep them anyway. Saturday, you got absolutely demolished, and we could pick that apart, I'm sure. But you got the RPI in a much better spot. It was for a decent portion of the season. They're hovering around 60, which is not great. So anyway, that's what I like to do with baseball is like set expectations, 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3 going in, and try to stick to that no matter how it unfolds.
A couple of comments here. Dwayne says, I love your shirt and hat, Rob. Thank you. You've upped your game tonight, setting a new standard. Thank you. Shelly says Ryan Hyatt should go with the fedora route. You think Hyatt has any fedoras in his closet? I think he does. And then Dwayne says, I was impressed with the West Virginia crowd. They showed up even in the bad weather. I thought so too. There was a little bit of contentiousness maybe at the end that the crowd was getting a little chippy, but I like chippy crowds. I like that they are active, and a West Virginia regional is going to be absolutely electric.
Yeah, do you want to get into all that? I mean, we haven't really analyzed the actual baseball part yet.
Yeah.
On Saturday, there's nothing to analyze. There's no commentary we can add.
Well, I've one comment on Saturday. Brady Trachtel does not look like an athlete, does not look like a pitcher, and he carves people. and pitches deep into games.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're watching on Twitter, we cannot see your comments. Those are going to the ocean. I do not know how to change that. Well, I do know how to change it. Come to YouTube. You can follow us on YouTube. Subscribe. Hit that like button. Smash it. Subscribe on YouTube. So if you want to comment, come to YouTube. Go to Facebook at Gamblin Gauchos on either platform. Baseball-wise, I really don't know how much to say. I thought you played well Friday. I thought you played well Sunday. They housed you on Saturday, but we can get into the crowd aspect.
So I'll be the first to say, okay, anytime you start talking about this, it immediately pivots to like whataboutisms and, oh, you guys do the same thing or whatever. And so I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not pretending like Texas Tech's football crowd or basketball crowd or any of that is like a country club tennis match. I know that our students cuss. I know that our fans have flipped the bird, all that fun stuff. What I think we're not guilty of, Rob, is doing that kind of thing and then crying about the other team's lack of sportsmanship. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I thought that was a weird cry anyways.
Like,
and some of our fans cried about it too, and they just don't pay attention, I guess. And they haven't been to a baseball game this year, apparently.
So, like, I'm not saying that they're wrong for maybe suggesting if there was a handshake snub, and we haven't even gotten into that part yet. If there was a handshake snub, yeah, that's not great unless there's some underlying reason for it. So I'm not saying their fans are wrong to have wanted maybe our coach to shake hands or whatever, but you are wrong if your own coach got ejected for putting hands on an ump. Your fans are on video flipping off the umps. You were doing a "you suck" chant. I misinterpreted that hand up. I thought it was a word that rhymes with suck you, but it was you suck.
Yeah.
But still, you do all that and then go, hey, where's the sportsmanship, guys? Come shake our hands. It's like, well, it doesn't seem like sportsmanship was what y'all were going for. So again, not saying Texas Tech was right, but also not saying that the West Virginia fans' behavior was right. Also not griping about it, though. Like, I'm not doing the pro clutching. I'm not saying that y'all shouldn't be fired up and yell at the umps. Do whatever you want. It just seems a little bit hypocritical to bemoan the lack of sportsmanship after putting on a display like that.
Yeah, I thought that was really weird. And look, fans are fans. And if you weren't at the game, if you weren't a West Virginia fan at the game, you're just a West Virginia fan commenting on Twitter. You probably didn't even know that West Virginia fans were doing all those things. So, is what it is. Didn't really care about all that. Didn't care about the handshake line because handshake lines like that don't happen. You don't like, it's not high school baseball. You don't meet on the mound and shake hands. The coaches might at home plate generally, but on a Sunday, the winning team meets at the mound and shakes the winning team's hand. The losers don't go out there.
Yeah, that's what I couldn't figure out because
on Sunday you went in the dugout.
It was the West Virginia play-by-play guy or somebody like that who initially tweeted that out. He was like, the game goes final and Texas Tech skips the handshake line, and of course Twitter just ran with it. And I sort of, I didn't think much of it. And then people were like, there is no handshake line. I was like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. Like when we play TCU or whatever in Lubbock, like the teams didn't line up and shake each other's hands. So I don't know if they're maybe just new to the baseball thing because they're having their greatest season of all time, probably on track for that right now. I don't know. Or if there was like a snub, like if Tadlock refused to go out there or something. I'm not sure what transpired. I don't know if we have answers there. But I mean this sincerely. They're going to host a regional and it's going to be litty. So I'm happy for the fans in Morgantown, especially if they let more of them on the berm down the first base line. That place is going to be electric. A
word to the beer distributors and the moonshine distributors in Morgantown, West Virginia. Buy double. And maybe get some barbecue or something. If you were going to stock barbecue for a regional, Kyle, who would you go to?
I'd stock up on Rahino. I wish they were a little bit closer. If they were as close as our friends in, say, like Norman or Stillwater, I would totally go to that Morgantown regional wearing this hat. And this is our gear from when we committed to the ears during March Madness. But and I'd bring a cooler full of Rahino barbecue and probably swap that out for some moonshine and let the fine people of the Appalachian region enjoy the best barbecue from West Texas.
That shirt would go very well in West Virginia. I don't know how much of the rest of the country it would go over well in right now.
Yeah, I got this before Bob Huggins was canceled. He did like a fish fry with Charles Barkley, and it's the only West Virginia shirt I own, so I had to wear it. It's not like any kind of commentary on the recent Bob Huggins news. It's just,
Fair
like
enough.
I said, the only West Virginia shirt I own, so I wore it.
Jeff says, nice lid. I think he's talking to you.
I think he's got the same one in his profile picture.
Nice. Gauchos, hear me out. This is a college bowl question, or a statement, rather. Bowl games need to be revised to only get an invite if you go 500 or better in conference play.
I'm for it if conferences start playing 10 conference games.
Did you see the Big Ten news? They're talking about not having to play Power 5, opposing Power 5. Surely that's because they're going to play 10 conference games, right?
No, I think that is actually not news. I think that if people would read carefully, it says that they're dropping the requirement to play a Power 5 opponent. But you would think most of those schools would still want to play a Power 5 opponent.
I think you're giving them the benefit of the doubt instead of giving me the benefit of the doubt.
I mean, do you really think Ohio State fans are going to want to play 3 FCS schools?
No, but what about Rutgers? Ohio State's going to play Power 5, but Rutgers may not.
Well, who cares?
Indiana's going to go 2014 Baylor on their non-con.
Who cares? Those aren't the teams we really care about in the Big Ten, nationally, are they?
No, there's only 3 teams I care about in the Big Ten.
I mean, who did Rutgers play in the non-con last year?
No idea, but I couldn't tell you who Ohio State played.
Yeah, you could, because they played Oregon recently, and they played TCU somewhat recently.
Okay.
They've played some big
they played
non-con
Oregon
matchups.
I'm so excited for that Oregon game in Lubbock.
Me too. I am worried, though, staying on topic real quick, I am worried that as the Big Ten and SEC separate, they're just going to quit playing ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, whatever that looks like, and kind of like freeze them out.
Yeah.
Because if you're one of the better teams that's not in the Power 2, like let's say Oregon and Washington stay in the Pac-12, or Clemson, Florida State, Oklahoma State, programs like that, why would the Floridas and Alabamas and Michigan States of the world that are in the Power 2, why would they give you a platform to go prove that you're just as good on a national stage? Like, I think they'll just kind of tuck their tail and run. It's the same philosophy kind of as like A&M refusing to play Texas or any Big 12 schools. They're like, well, it doesn't do us any good. If we win, we're supposed to win. If we lose, it's a black eye. And so I think that a lot of Big 10 and SEC schools are going to adopt that frame of mind for non-conference scheduling, and that's going to suck.
Haley says, I'm so jacked up for Oregon. It's May, and I'm pissed drunk on Kool-Aid. Not so. By the way, Brett McMurphy, a couple of bombs today. We'll talk about the Texas Tech bomb first. You ready for a Cotton Bowl against Alabama?
I've been waiting 18 years, Rob.
Has it been 8? Yeah, 2006. Wow. What's more likely? Texas Tech is in the Cotton Bowl, or Alabama misses the playoff for a second straight season?
Oh, I think Alabama missing the playoff is far more likely.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they have better than a 60% chance of making the playoff. I mean, I know it's Alabama and they reload, but they just lost a 3-year starter at quarterback.
True.
Or 2-year starter at quarterback, maybe.
Heisman.
They're stuck against. They're gonna have to play Georgia in the conference championship game if they make it that far. They're stuck in a division with Brian Kelly, who I think pound for pound is one of the best coaches in college football. So it's not going to be easy for them. Versus Texas Tech, pegged as probably the 4th best team in the Big 12 via the odds makers, making it all the way to the New Year's Six. I would say that's less likely.
It's just so crazy to me that Alabama made it every single yethe and then they're going to miss 2 in a row. That just seems crazy.
They didn't make it in 2019.
I thought that was the first year they didn't make it. Last year.
Nope, they didn't make it in 2019.
Really?
Tua got hurt against LSU.
Oh,
Mac
yeah.
Jones lost in the Iron Bowl, and they
That's
didn't
right.
make it.
That's right. That's the LSU season.
Yeah.
Greatest show on turf.
Somebody posted highlights of that game, LSU versus Alabama, and they were like, count how many NFL players. And it really was ridiculous. It was Burrow to, of course, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and then Bama had Tua, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. Just crazy. And then I think Mac Jones came in that game for Tua, so he's in there. Not only NFL guys, but like first rounder after first rounder. That game was insane.
Defensive line, too.
Oh, yeah. That's not even counting like all the defensive or linemen.
Yeah.
So,
it's like 2008 Big 12 South.
seriously.
Is Texas Tech primed for an expanded playoff bid in McGuire's third year? Yes. Fourth year. I think the fourth year is really where you see it pay off.
I think by year 3, they'll have the talent level where we'll be contenders for a 12-team playoff. Because you're probably thinking like top 2 in the new Big 12. Maybe top 3 would get into a 12-team format. And I think we'd be right there talent-wise.
Here's why I say top 4 or year 4. The level of super senior you have on this roster, I think you're going to maybe take a step back next year, be more talented, but inexperienced. And then year 4, you're really going to be good, I think. All right. We did allude to it earlier when you were talking about the Big Ten and the SEC just taking over. The ACC is having some impending doom here. 7 schools met for more than 4 hours today. Virginia Tech, NC State, Miami, Clemson, Florida State, Virginia, and North Carolina about potentially getting out of the grant of rights. They're calling it the Magnificent Seven. First of all, badass name. Second of all, I wouldn't have, if you would have given me 7 teams, 7 chances to name 7 teams that wanted out of the ACC, I would have given you for sure Clemson and Florida State, Virginia Tech, NC State, and North Carolina. But I don't know. Well, I don't know about NC State or Virginia. Certainly not surprised Duke not being mentioned. I don't know if I could have got to some Miami for sure. But it seems like there's a lot of those academics out there that don't care about athletics like some do. And certainly that seems like an athletic-based conversation.
Yeah, I think Florida State and Clemson are the 2 that have been making a ton of noise. Miami probably living in the 80s and early 2000s, thinking that they're in that same realm too. And then I think UNC and Virginia, just as kind of like large state flagships and the academics, I think they are confident they'll have a seat at the Power 2. So those would be the 5. And then I thought Virginia Tech and NC State were kind of political inclusions. Probably UNC and Virginia didn't want their in-state public school counterparts to find out that they were part of the Fab Five. And so they're like, yeah, we'll make it the Magnificent Seven.
Right.
But yeah, no surprise at all that Wake Forest, Boston College, Syracuse, Louisville, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, I think, is kind of fringe because they're really good academically. They're in a huge market.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation because if I understand it correctly, they need 3/4 of their membership to vote to disband the grant of rights, or they need a successful legal challenge. They need a way out of the contract because right now they are locked in through 2036. And so here's what I struggle with. Florida State and Clemson and Miami and UNC can want out as badly as they want. They could have the Big Ten and SEC saying, yeah, we've got a spot for you as soon as you're free. But what incentive does Boston College or Syracuse or Wake Forest have to vote to disband the conference before 2036 if they don't have a landing spot in the Power 2? And I don't even think like the Pitt and Louisville's of the world would vote to disband knowing they had a home in the Big 12. I think they would prefer to stay in the ACC. So I don't think they're going to get the votes to disband the conference and nullify the grant of rights, it's going to take a successful legal challenge.
But I think this is a great first step because I kind of assumed in all of our conversations on conference realignment in the last, 2 years, that the ACC was off the table. Even when we got crazy after Texas and Oklahoma left, before USC and everything else, and we were talking way into the future, you kind of always said, well, it would be awesome for the Big 12 to have Miami and NC State and Pitt after the new additions, to kind of have UCF and Miami, and then really get into Florida. Then you have Pitt up there with Virginia and Kentucky, or not Kentucky, Cincinnati. Then you add the state of Kentucky with Louisville. That's a really nice pod. That's a really nice pod in Florida. But that was all like, well, let's just get the Pac-12 schools first and do that. But now you might be doing it all at once. And maybe you're still 4 years out for the ACC, but this just adds incentive for the Pac-12 stuff to be wrapped up sooner, because the next level is already coming.
Yeah, I was thinking on similar timelines. I mean, I've been pretty 50-50 on if you'd be able to poach from the Pac-12 this round. And I kind of thought of a timeline where the Pac-12 would stay together for another 4 or 5 years, and then Oregon and Washington would move on, and you would add, a pod of four corner schools in 2028 or, whatever. And then you'd wait another 5 or 6 years, and the ACC would be close enough to the end of their contract that they would start announcing some movement. So, yeah, I thought you'd be building up over the next 10 or 12 years, like, okay, add 4 from the Pac in a few years, and then a few years after that, add a pod to, make things make more geographic sense and all that for West Virginia, Cincinnati, and UCF. And I don't know, it still could be on that timeline, but it seems like Florida State and Clemson went from, hey, it's disappointing that we're falling behind, to like, let's exhaust any and all options to try to get out of this. If they want a recommendation on an attorney to challenge that grant of rights, who would you send them to, Rob?
I think I'd send them to the BHW law firm. I don't know if they handle that kind of stuff, but I certainly think that they could give you some precedent.
Yeah, they could give it a try, and I would assume that would be good for our friends over at Barnett, Howard, and Williams, because we're talking a multi-billion-dollar contract or whatever. That if they're able to nullify and get Florida State and Clemson paid, they take their 1% or 5% or whatever, and Barnett, Howard, and Williams might be the Barnett, Howard, and Williams podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, they do good work. I don't think they actually challenge grant of rights agreements, but they do handle all sorts of criminal defense, catastrophic injury, Title IX student litigation, bhwlawfirm.com. I still want some Pac schools, mostly the Arizonas. I kind of want Utah just so that BYU has the holy war. I want the Arizonas for the Pacific time zone. I want the border conference rivalry. Colorado, I'm kind of, take them if they're there, I guess. If you added those 4 or any combo of those 4 out west, and you could get a pot of 4 out east, in my opinion, I think you're able to sort of counteract one of the biggest casualties of modern conference realignment, which has been to take away all this tradition and rivalry and regional aspect of the game. And, now UCLA and Rutgers are playing conference games against each other. It makes no sense. But if you're able to pair BYU with Utah and put Colorado with some old Big 8 rivalries, and you've got 4 Southwest Conference schools back together, and then you've got on the Eastern Seaboard, West Virginia and Cincinnati playing rivalry games against Louisville, that's a trophy game. That's a keg of nails. Yep. West Virginia, Virginia Tech is the Blackstone Trophy. What's that called? Not the Blackstone Trophy. Black Diamond Trophy.
Yeah.
I've got grilling on my mind. I was on the Blackstone this weekend. Of course, the Backyard Brawl. That's one of the greatest rivalries in college athletics.
ESP. So
I think that'd be great specifically for kind of the 2 poles of the conference, which would be BYU and West Virginia. But you would get true rivalry games and real tradition and history back in an expanded conference. And this might be a pipe dream. I mean, maybe you're not going to 20 teams or even 16 teams, But mapping it out, it looks good. If you could get anywhere near that, I think it would make a lot of people happy.
I don't want to pass in terms of team number, the Big Ten or the SEC, but I want to keep up with them. And if the Big Ten and the SEC are moving that way, then yeah, I think you can be aggressive in that market. Personally, I want 2 Pac-12 schools and then just kind of live there for a while. If you end up getting 4, you get 4. Shelley says, give me a balanced overlook of the national landscape before clinging to the ACC and Pac. Zoom out and identify our own best fits with offensive thought, not reactionary thought. Well, I think the teams in the Pac and the ACC are the best fits. There are 2 lanes out there who I think can grow and get bigger, but let them grow and get bigger somewhere else, and then eventually maybe get into something. But I mean, if you're talking about just big gets, Miami is a big get athletically. Virginia Tech, Pitt would be huge gets. Louisville would be huge gets, not only to get further east and be more national and compete with the time zone that dominates college football and sports in general, the Eastern time zone. You're also creating those regional rivalries, which are great for college football and college sports in general, like you just said. So I think that is the offensive thought, to add those certain schools and to target them in other conferences. I think that is the offensive thought instead of the reactionary.
Absolutely. And depending on the age of some of our listeners, first off, I don't think I'll ever live down the embarrassment of calling the Black Diamond Trophy the Blackstone Trophy. But Big East football, you remember, Rob, it was a lot of fun. And the teams changed over a lot because some of them went to the ACC. But I remember, like, especially that 2007 season when basically half the country got to be ranked number 1 or number 2 at some point. And USF was there. Rutgers played some thrillers. Louisville and UCF, Cincinnati, like, they all played each other. And so maybe it's not ideal, maybe it's not perfect, but rekindling some of those old school Big East rivalries that used to play some incredible games on Thursday or Friday nights, it would be a lot of fun for this conference. And I think really broaden your appeal nationally. You know, the fact of the matter is when Texas and OU left, you were pretty, besides West Virginia, everybody's up and down the I-35 corridor more or less in somewhat rural markets and a little bit of a hodgepodge. Like Iowa State playing TCU it's a strange fit to have a private school in Fort Worth playing an ag school in Iowa. And so I think if you were able to get a little bit of a Western pod, a little bit of an Eastern pod, it would complement itself really, really well. And you wouldn't be this island of misfit toys. It'd actually be, you could probably do 2 full-blown rivalry weeks. If you wanted to start the season with one in September, end it in November, and not like partly contrived rivalries. I mean, you'd have some of that. Like, I still want Houston and UCF to do the space race, but you'd have legit Holy War, Backyard Brawl, Revivalry, Farmageddon, Dust Bowl, Keg of Nails, you name it.
Yeah.
And then kind of these secondary rivalries. So like West Virginia versus Virginia Tech, Texas Tech versus TCU, Battle for the Saddle, all that good stuff in there too. UCF Cincinnati, I know that one's already there, but if you've interacted with any of their fans on Twitter, they have some pretty serious animosity for each other. And so I hope we get some version of this, and I'm really curious to see how this plays out with the ACC. But again, I think it all goes back to, can they even challenge their contract, or are they stuck for the next 12 years?
The Braves are stomping the Rangers. NC State would be a great fit. I do think that, but with who? So I think NC State's a great fit culturally, kind of feel-wise, but I think they'd have to come with NC State or North Carolina. I don't think they fit on their own.
They'd be a little bit lonely. I think you'd have to, if that map we tweeted out winds up being accurate, you'd have to make them and Virginia Tech kind of force a rivalry, which that might sort of be just because they're in the same area, same conference. But obviously they both have other teams that they think of as rivals before each other. But if they're alone with each, I mean, it's kind of like when Oklahoma leaves, Oklahoma State kind of has to find a new rival to play every year. So you got to lean into something new. So if you could pair those two together, I think that wouldn't be the worst thing ever. But yeah, I don't want to take Wake Forest. Maybe you bring Duke for basketball. It'd be an incredible basketball conference if you started considering Duke and Syracuse on top of Louisville. If you wanted UConn as basketball only, Arizona, Kansas. If you wanted Gonzaga for basketball only, you could do some pretty crazy stuff with the basketball conference. But yeah, I don't know if NC State would be. I don't know who you would pair them with besides kind of manufacturing a pairing with Virginia Tech or bringing along Duke for basketball.
Alex says the guy from American Aquarium is a North Carolina State guy, and he likes Lubbock. That's good enough for him.
I'll put that in the 6 degrees thread whenever we play NC State for a conference game.
You could do it next year when they come to Lubbock.
They don't actually return for a while, right?
Oh, is it not? It's the year after next?
I think it's like 27 or 28. It's a while.
That's annoying.
Yeah.
Amazing what the Big 12 could do now that it has a commissioner.
Yeah, hey, we should harp on that. When the Big 12 was trying to survive back in 2011, 2012, they added West Virginia, which was great, but they should have taken Louisville and probably Cincinnati at the same time. Like, it made no sense, in my opinion, to pair West Virginia with TCU when you already had Texas, Texas Tech, and Baylor. Like, you didn't do anything to expand the footprint. And you could have said, like, okay, yeah, we're going to go all in and, make this pod out east and take the best programs from, at that point, the Big East. So I think that was a missed opportunity. You could have had Cincinnati and Louisville under your umbrella for the last decade. And I think that was kind of a whiff.
Yeah, for sure, Louisville. I mean, you can rectify that soon, hopefully.
Hopefully.
All right. Do you have any other final thoughts on realignment, or do you want to get to the diversified mailbag?
No, I want to follow realignment tidbits that come out over the next couple of days and stew on this. And I think you and I we have all off season to do realignment scenarios. And so, yeah, I'm mulling through a Dos Equis sponsorship for the Big 20 and a new conference logo. So, yeah, we'll get into that more next episode.
All right, the Diversified Lenders mailbag. Diversified Lenders turn your cash into accounts receivable. Turn your accounts receivable into cash, whatever it is. They know, I don't. But visit them at diversifiedlenders.com. Consider the following. You're at bat and your team is being held hitless off base late into the game. No hitter is intact. You make contact and hit a ground ball that forces an infielder into a tough but still playable out. How hard do you run to try to break up the no-hitter?
As hard as you can.
This question never made sense. If it's the 8th inning and it's 1-0, I'm bunting for a hit. I'm calling for a slap hit. I'm telling you to take whatever you can get. I never understood it's against the unwritten rules to bunt for a hit in the no-hitter. Get on base. You're trying to win a game. You don't care about their records.
I think it depends on the score. If you're in a 1-0 game that's a no-hitter, then yeah, everything's on the table. If you're losing 8-0 in a no-hitter, I wouldn't bunt, but you still have to run it out. Otherwise, it diminishes the achievement for the other guy. Like throwing a no-no against a team that's not running it out is kind of like I could do that. If you hit the ball and don't run, I could throw a no-no.
Yeah. I mean, that cheapens the no-hitter.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a perfect game because I'd walk 2 out of 3 batters, but I could throw a no-no if nobody ran to first.
Yeah. I would walk every batter.
I'm not Dallas Braden over here, but I could throw a no-no. Come on.
That was technically on the 9th, but Mother's Day was when he threw it. 2010?
I think that's right.
What is one sporting event stadium you want to see before you die?
How about going outside the box here? How about the Colosseum in Rome?
Interesting.
I was waiting for the ruling there.
I would go, yeah, that's not a bad one. Obviously, you're talking about historical there.
Or my runner-up would be War Memorial Stadium in Laramie, Wyoming.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do that one. I will say, talking about some of these ACC schools, Virginia Tech would be really fun to go to, see the Inner Sandman. I would love to go to a backyard brawl. Some of these regional rivalries, I'd like to go to the game, Ohio State, Michigan. A bunch of those college football rivalries, that would be really fun to get out to. But just specific stadiums, I want to go to Allegiant there for Chiefs Raiders in the NFL. I've never been to Yankee Stadium, but it's not old Yankee Stadium, so
Yeah,
a lot of history there.
I think Wrigley or Fenway would be top of my list if I was trying to go to like a historic ballpark.
Yeah, I've been to Wrigley. Saw a walk-off at Wrigley.
That's cool.
Back in 2007.
I've always wondered how crazy it would be and if it really sets in. If you live in one of those apartments or like work in one of those office buildings, it's literally right there.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool, but if you live there for 15 years or something, I don't know. Maybe you'd get sick of it.
Oh, something I've seen a lot on social media lately is that hotel in Toronto. Have you seen this? There's a hotel in the outfield. So you can book a room overlooking the stadium.
That's Toronto. Cool.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to go to Canada, but will we see Texas Tech try at the Big 12 tournament for the first time in a while?
I thought they were trying last year because and they went 1-2, which is what they always do if they don't go 0 for 2. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you really don't have the pitching depth to play in that kind of format. I think even a regional 4 games might be a stretch. But yeah, Big 12 tournament, you might have to play 5 games. And I don't know who's pitching game 5.
Depends what happens against Kansas, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, as long as the wheels don't fall off against Kansas, you're in and can treat it like you normally do. But
piggybacking off the earlier question, what team's ballpark would you most want to visit if Tech could schedule a home-and-home non-con? Bluebell.
Oh, this is for baseball?
Yeah. Ballpark. I assume it's baseball.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
I mean, Duty Noble, Bluebell, some of those SEC stadiums I'd want to go to.
Yeah, I think Stark Vegas. What?
BYU. But
okay. I was trying to answer the question before you gave your third answer. So sorry for interrupting there, Rob.
Yeah. We'll go with you interrupted me there.
I know you played there recently, but I didn't get to go. But going to Stark Vegas would be fun. It's a good program, and they treat it like a big deal out there. I think that's the problem with baseball is so many fan bases just don't really engage. And so really, yeah, it is a lot of SEC, some ACC that they really treat it like they should and make it fun. So I'd go with one of those.
Mr. Root says Creighton, by the way.
Yeah.
It's Omaha. You got some goat talk here. Have you ever sacrificed a goat?
No.
Me neither. Sorry, trying to get through some stuff here. We don't need to talk about selling
kind
goat.
of polluted it a little bit during the goat talk.
Meat goat production is very profitable. Okay, what are we doing here? What player in any sport would you cure of the injury bug if you could? And he went all time because he said Ken Griffey Jr.
That's a good one. I think Ken Griffey Jr. is probably, if he stays injury-free, he's probably regarded as the greatest baseball player of all time. Yeah, it's hard to top that. I can't think of anybody else that I'd be that confident saying they'd be the best to ever play their sport had they not been injured. So I think Ken Griffey's the right answer.
Bo Jackson.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Maybe not of all time, but certainly would have prolonged his football career.
Sure.
I don't understand this question, so I'm not going to read it. Can we get Ludwig Aberg on the pod before he becomes super rich on the Live Tour? Oh, my God. This comment.
I actually thought of that same comment earlier.
Oh.
He was already toward the tail end of his career, though, so it wouldn't have actually, I don't think, changed much.
Ludwig, by the way, I was going to say this earlier. In the Norman Regional, Texas Tech leading after day 1. They'll play 3 rounds. They're -10. OU in their own regional, Tech's the 1 seed, but Oklahoma's -9, Alabama -7, Duke -5, Colorado -4. The top 5 advance. And I believe Ludwig is in the top 3 in the individuals at -5 today. The 2 in front of him at -6. He is solo third. And then you had the Big 12 track champions, Texas Tech, this weekend. 179 points, the most ever in a Big 12 championship meet for a team.
I think just a program record.
No, they doubled down that it was a Big 12 record.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And we didn't even run the 4x4.
And they did not even run the last meet, which is crazy because I guess you can just run it whenever and qualify. You don't even have to qualify at the meet to go to the next meet. It's an interesting tidbit.
Yeah, I think they'll have a real shot at competing for an outdoor national championship. They've been ranked second all season. And, I don't have the time to do this, but if somebody was curious enough, they could look at every qualifier's personal best and just sort of make a points projection on, like, let's say it goes chalk, everybody runs their personal record, which some people are going to break their personal record and some aren't going to match it, which is why there's movement up and down. But I think Tech will have a shot. I mean, they're obviously going to have to perform really well. I think Chase was saying that, most of our bread is buttered in the short sprints, and so they really need to get a lot of points in the 100, 200. But yeah, it'll be fun to follow that. And of course, they won it all in 2019, and it'd be really cool to see them do it again.
One of our picadors is watching this Braves game in Arlington. It's 10-0. Last I checked, the Stars were up. Final thoughts before we go watch the third period?
Join the Patreon. Patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos. We're having a lot of fun over there. Now that it's off season, we have a little bit more time to do some interviews, and so we started a series with some local Lubbock media legends. We talked to David Collier, Casey Cowan. Those were a lot of fun. And we just caught up with Tennessee Titans kicker, former Texas Tech kicker Trey Wolf. That was also a lot of fun. It's $5 a month. Gets you access to those types of interviews. We've got others with Cody Campbell, Dusty Womble, Sonny Cumbie, Matt Mooney. Gets you access to the #1 Texas Tech fan Discord server. You can live stream some episodes that we don't stream on YouTube. You can ask questions in the mailbag. It's a pretty good deal for $5 a month, especially with inflation. This was like $4.25 a month a year ago. So take advantage. My final thought, Rob, I met Jordan Spieth. Speaking of the parlay picadors, went to the Byron Nelson and met Jordan Spieth. He's a cool guy. He's married to a Red Raider, and so when it was our turn to take a picture, we asked him if he would do a guns up, and he was cool about it. And so I hope he wins another major so that we can say, that we're happy for Red Raider legend Jordan Spieth. And it was pretty cool to meet him. So that's my final thought, I guess.
It's a beautiful final thought, and I'm going to end it with that one as well.
Thanks, Rob. Love y'all.